Even that theme music, that's why. Get ready to do the job.
All right, now I'm not much of a speaker, okay? I'm not good at this kind of stuff. First of all, my ancestry enlisted in August of 1863, in Orange County, Virginia. And they stuck him around Five Forks, which is southwest of Petersburg, near the sea of Petersburg. Got some information here from my good friend, brother in arms, fellow countryman Ted Kinker, found this article for me. This article was written with a private G.H. Basket, Tennessee, and this was published in the Confederate Veteran in December of 1893. This should be a pretty good article. He says nearly 33 years have passed since the alarm of war called from their peaceful pursuits the citizens who were to make name and fame as Confederate soldiers. The Confederate soldier was not an ordinary soldier, either in appearance or character. With your permission, I will undertake to draw a portrait of him as he really appeared in the hard service of privation and danger. He goes on to say what a Confederate soldier looked like. A face browned by exposure and heavily bearded, or for some weeks unshaven, begrimed with dust and sweat, and marked here and there by the darker stains of powder. A face whose stolid and even melancholy composure is easily broken into ripples of good humor, or quickly flushed in the fervor and abandon of the charge. A frame tough and sinewy, and trained by hardship to surprising powers of endurance. A form the shapeless of which is hidden by its encumberments, suggesting in its careless and unaffected pose a languorous indisposition to exertion, yet a latent lion-like strength and a terrible energy of action when aroused. Around the upper part of the face is a fringe of unkempt hair, and above this an old wool hat, worn and weather-beaten, the flaccid brim of which falls limp upon the shoulders behind and is folded back in front against the elongated and crumpled crown. Over a soiled shirt, which is unbuttoned and buttonless at the collar, is a ragged gray jacket that does not reach the hips, with sleeves some inches too short. Below this, trousers of a nondescript color, without form and almost void, are held in place by a leather belt, to which is attached the cartridge box that rests behind the right hip, and the bayonet scabbard which dangles on the left. Just above the ankles, each trouser leg is tied closely to the limb, and beneath reaches of dirty socks disappears in a pair of badly used and curiously contorted shoes. Kind of like these. Between the jacket and the waistband of trousers of the sporting belt, there appears a puffy display of cotton serge, which works out further with every inch made by Johnny in his effort to keep his pantaloons in place. I guess they call them pantaloons. Yeah. Across his body from his left shoulder is a roll of threadbare blanket, the ends tied together, resting on or falling below the right hip. This blanket is Johnny's bed. Whenever he arises, he takes up his bed and walks. Within this roll is a shirt, his only extra article of clothing. In action, the blanket roll is thrown further back and the cartridge is drawn forward, frequently in front of the body. From the right shoulder across the body pass two straps, one cloth, the other leather, making a cross with blanket roll on breast and back. These straps support respectively a greasy cloth haversack and a flannel-covered canteen kept for Sunday babies. That'd be like this. Attached to the haversack strap is a tin cup, while in addition to some odds and ends of camp trumpery, there are hanged over his back a frying pan, an invaluable utensil with which the soldier would be loath to part. Did I say that word right?
Be low.
Yeah, loath to part. With his trusty gun in hand and infield rifle, also captured from the enemy and substituted for the old flintlock musket or the shotgun with which he was originally armed. Johnny Reb, thus imperfectly sketched, stands in his shreds and patches a marvelous ensemble. Model citizen soldier, the military hero of the 19th century. There is none of the tinsel or trappings of the professional about him. From an aesthetic military point of view, he must appear a sorry-looking soldier. But Johnny is not one of your dress parade soldiers. He doesn't care a copper whether anybody likes his looks or not. He is the most independent soldier to ever belong to an organized army. He has respect for authority, and he cheerfully submits to discipline because he sees the necessity of organization to effect the best results. But he maintains his individual autonomy, as it were, and never surrenders his sense of personal pride or responsibility. He is thoroughly tractable and properly officered, and is always ready to obey necessary orders. But he is quick to resent any official incivility, and is a high private and feels and is every inch as good as a general. He may appear ludicrous enough on a display occasion of the holiday pomp and splendor of war, but place him where duty calls in the imminent deadly breach or the perilous charge, and none in all the armies of the earth can claim a higher rank or prouder record. He may be ill-fashioned in dress, but he has supplemented his poverty in rags. The worn and faded gray jacket, glorified by valor and stained with the lifeblood of its wearer, becomes in its immortality of association a more splendid vestment than the mail of medieval knight or the rarest robe of royalty. That old weather-beaten slouch hat, seen as the ages will see it, with its halo of fire through the smoke of battle, is a kinglier covering than a crown. Half-clad, half-armed, often half-fed, without money and without price, the Confederate soldier fought against the resources of the world. When at last his flag was furled and his arms were grounded in defeat, the cause for which he had struggled was lost. He had won the faceless victory of soldiership. I thought that was pretty good argument, man. I know during when the war started, and I'm sure most guys wanted the best boots. I'm sure everybody wanted high boots, and if they had them at home, I'm sure that's what they wore. To come to find out, the heel on those boots probably wasn't the best thing for marches, especially the infantry soldier. So therefore, they went with the Brogans, and the Confederate Army did issue those when they had them. If not, I mean, we know there's a lot of dead soldiers on the field, and stuff was used. I mean, they didn't have no use for them anymore, and that stuff happened. I mean, that's how they got their shoes, their canteens, especially as the war went on. Because things wore out. Your cartridge boxes wore out, your cap pouches wore out. You put, this leather will wear out. And you retrieve them on the battlefield, them kind of things. Same with shoes, jackets. And it was not uncommon for a Confederate soldier to wear a blue kepi or a blue forage cap from the Federals. Especially a lot of Federals that were captured, they had no use for a cartridge box or a cap pouch, so therefore Confederate soldier would use it. And any questions?
What is the theater and the time period that your outfit represents? What's kind of like the impersonation you're going?
Okay, I would be Army Northern Virginia. This is actually this is a Richmond gray shell jacket. It's a 9-button front, which was issued the 26th North Carolina.
Is that like a Richmond 2 or a Richmond 3? Do you know?
That is what?
Well, I've been doing some research on like reenactment, and it's kind of like they talk about like a Richmond number 2 jacket, Richmond number 3.
The one he's wearing is later in the war, because the first ones they issued had gray with black trim. The first issues were gray with black trim, and they said somewhere around Gettysburg's when that was changed.
I know you have the shell jacket, and then you have a sack coat, which would be longer, more civilian looking type, but with military colors.
You think they would wear them like even in the summer? Or would they just go shirt in the shirt?
Well, as you see if you're on the battlefield, you would want your jacket. In hot days, the top button is always buttoned. And that way you'll get air through here. I know, did infantry wear the red battle shirts? I know the cavalry did.
Artillery did.
Just artillery and cavalry. You would want your jacket. In summer months I've heard instances like bedrolls. You really didn't need those.
Because that looks hot.
And and here again, early in the war, you had supply trains for your tents, your blankets, and that kind of thing. In winter quarters, of course, you would have your blanket, especially if there were a lot of battles. November, December, usually around Christmas time was probably the cutoff. Then it went into winter quarters. One of those battles, you would find a blanket or a bedroll or something on the field that you would want during the winter, but you wouldn't have to lug it around. An infantry soldier on the march would want to be as light as he could. Like these canteens. Yeah, you put water in them, but a lot of times, especially eastern theater around here, there's creeks and springs around. You get a drink of water. These are more or less used for foraging parties and stuff. When you go, maybe put some buttermilk in them or
Corn liquor.
some good drink or something. That's all kinds of big canteens. And early in the war, a soldier would have probably had a knapsack. I don't really know if the Confederate Army actually.
I'm not sure about that either, because that's some of the stuff
That was
on the cover.
more Yankee.
What we read was they did have knapsacks. Now, I don't know if all of them did, but they did have them, but they found out, they just started,
Yeah, too heavy.
yeah.
Just dispose of that stuff. And like we was talking about when they did, they just dispose of all that stuff, just throw it to the wayside.
Right.
I'm trying to remember which
You know,
movie I
you're
watched.
carrying an actual infield rifle with 9 pounds.
A lot of weight.
That's a lot of weight. You definitely want your haversack, because that's your stuff, your personal stuff that you want to keep, like your plate, your fork, your knife, toothbrush, that kind of stuff.
One note on the supply trains, because I found this interesting. I was reading about Stonewall Jackson during the Shenandoah campaign in 1862. The reason why I found it interesting, he had talked about supply train, and really what it is wagons. And each company would have a wagon or two, and basically there's where you threw your gear at. Like if you had a tent, or like you said, summer gear, you may throw your bedroll in there. And the reason why I found it interesting is that even today in the modern Army, the infantry still works that way. Because I worked as a mechanic, and when we were in what we call the battalion support area, which is where the medics were, the mechanics were, the armorers were, the ammo was, everything was right there in that base camp, and then the infantry units would go out from there. And I always heard them called log trains, for logistic trains. And then to read that in 1862 they had log trains there, I was fascinated. To me, that was so interesting, because I always wondered, I was like, how the crap they carry all that stuff?
That's where we're getting back to where we were reading this stuff. One wagon would accommodate, I think, was it 11 men or one?
Something like that.
Yeah, one company, okay? Or no, just 11 men. So it ended up they were having too many wagons, okay, while they're on the march. So that's when we get back to what Ricky D is saying, is that they would just double clothe themselves, okay? They would carry with themselves what they what they didn't put it in a wagon towards, you know, the middle of the war, or, I'm pretty sure at Gettysburg, they carried on what they were wearing, what they were using, instead of using a pack train.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Gettysburg, because that was one of the things, is that before they started the final day of battle, the first thing Robert E. Lee did was start his pack trains heading back south,
Right.
which I thought was kind of interesting, and because they were long. I mean, you figure how many wagons it would take to support, what, 50,000 troops or something like that,
Right.
50 or 60. It was miles
It could
and
be 10
miles.
miles long.
Yeah,
Wagon train could
and
be
so,
10 miles long.
in addition to those wagon trains, you also had like herds of cattle and stuff like that. Craziness. But
Right.
anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure, like, when, Chancellorsville, when, Stonewall Jackson, you know, was pushing the enemy and all, and, that's right about when the dog tents come about, that period. That was kind of a new thing, which was two halves that buttoned together. Confederate soldiers like those, and I've read where, one man would roll one half up and carry it with him, another man would roll the other half, you know. Come nighttime, bad weather, they would button together and they'd have shelter, find some sticks, have them on shelter
Hey,
tent,
it's-
or make some kind of shebang.
because you can make a shelter half of. When I went to basic training in the infantry, we had the exact same thing. You had a shelter half, and you get with another buddy, and it's like one person had one set of poles and one set of ropes and one set of pegs, the other one got, and you partnered up, and you had a complete pup tent.
If you had a gum, I call it gum blanket, or a tar blanket. It's right here, my actual blanket is wrapped up inside this to keep it dry. But each soldier would have one of these, and you take two soldiers together, they could lay one on the ground, cover up with their blankets, and then use the other one to cover up both of them. Keep them from the weather. And that was handy stuff. And that there's your frying pan. You need a frying pan. Of course, it issued 3 days rations. It consists of bacon, side meat, hardtack. Well, a soldier would eat most of that because, you know, he probably hadn't had any food in a couple of days anyway, so he'd eat most of that. Make it lighter on the march. He was used to going a couple of days without any food. I got some, I'll take this stuff off. I got some stuff in the haversack. Mark's here got a pistol. I got a Fayetteville 58 caliber. 58 caliber 2-band. I got my British Enfield over here, 3-band. Y'all more welcome to get up, take a look at them.
We'll do that, Ricky, we'll do that after me unless there's some things you want to hold up and explain. And I'll wrap the meeting up a little short, and then that way everybody's got a chance to look
My 10
around.
minutes is up.
Huh?
My 10 minutes is up.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, Ricky. Ricky's being shy. I'm sure he's got a lot more stories than